Welcome to another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I am your host, Michael. Along with me again is my co-host, Ken. How you doing, Ken?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Hang in there, man. Hang in there. For those who are new to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the Pound for Pound Boxing Report is a show / podcast / blog that discusses all things boxing. Our motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. The bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. To find out more information on the show, there are two places you can go. You can go to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog page. The address for that is p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. And repeat that, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. On the Pound for Pound Boxing Report blog page, you can find not just past episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast, but you can find articles written by yours truly. You can also go to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast page. The address for that is p4pboxingreport.podomatic.com. And repeat that, p4pboxingreport.podomatic.com. And there you can find all past episodes of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report podcast. On the blog page as well as the podcast page, you'll have links of where to find the Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over the internet, all over social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. And the handle for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page is at P4P Boxing Report. You can also find us on Tumblr, Google+, Pinterest, the RSS feed, where if you want to listen to the show via RSS feed, the link for that there. Also, a link where you can donate your account, be a friend, be a pal, be a buddy. Donate your Twitter account, and the address for that is donateyouraccount.com/P4P-Boxing-Report. Let me repeat that, donateyouraccount.com/P4P-Boxing-Report. And when you donate your account, again, be a friend, be a pal, be a buddy, donate your Twitter account. What happens there is any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page, your Twitter account will automatically have the ability to retweet any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page. With that, before we get those matters out the way, we have a guest tonight joining us live. Is Shawn. How you doing, Shawn?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for joining us. Let's get the show started tonight, guys, by doing a recap of this week's action in boxing, headlined, of course, by the return of Juan Manuel Marquez following his loss to Timothy Bradley this past September. He returned to the ring to face Mike Alvarado in Inglewood at the Forum. Marquez scoring a 12-round win over Alvarado. Very interesting fight, I guess. Shawn, I'll go with you. Your assessment of the fight and your assessment of Marquez. To me, while Marquez looked good, and again, he showed what kind of special fighter he is to do what he's doing at age 40. I was a little bit dumbfounded by the performance of Alvarado. When Kit and I talked about the show last week, we thought that Alvarado should have pressured Marquez and gone in his face and pressured him and really forced the pace against Marquez. He really didn't do that. He let Marquez set the pace and find the distance. And at that point, even though Marquez went down in round 9 after knocking Alvarado down in round 8, once he set the pace and when he found his way, had his sea legs, in a sense, to me, the fight was won at that point. Your thoughts about Shawn?
I agree. I think that Alvarado started too slow. I mean, he wanted to start boxing early on and trying to use his jab and figuring out that he could use his height and figure that, he could slowly build momentum and then take Marquez out. But with Marquez, especially being a counterpuncher, I mean, the best thing he could have done was jump on him early and try to impose his will. But unfortunately, he didn't do that, and then Marquez started to time him, and then he was a little afraid to come in.
Your thoughts, Ken? Were you as puzzled by the performance of Marquez, of Alvarado as I was, or do you think part of his performance had to do with what Marquez was doing throughout?
I was completely befuddled at the fact that Alvarado didn't go out there and use, he was a bigger guy, He essentially was a middleweight going into the ring on Saturday night, this past Saturday night, and he never used his physicality. He never, pushed the fight He never brought the fight or imposed his will on Marquez. He never made Marquez feel his age. He never made him do things. He never took Marquez out of his comfort zone. So Marquez just, after he just got comfortable, with the fact that he was, listen, Marquez has fought guys who have tried to box with him before, and he's shown that he can counterpunch effectively, even at the age of 40, very, very well against a guy who, I thought, listen, I thought Alvarado was slower than I thought. Like we a lot of people gave him credit for the Rios fight, but people tend to forget that Rios is quite slow. So you can anybody can outbox him. You can if you have at least a little bit of boxing skill, you can probably outbox him. And he's there to be hit. And I think that he just didn't let pull the trigger. The first half of the fight, he did not pull the trigger. Marquez got comfortable. He started counterpunching effectively. Alvarado didn't have an answer. In the second half, it seemed like after Alvarado got dropped in I think the 7th round. Was it the 7th? The 8th round. 8th round.
Right, with the right
it
hand.
seemed like that woke up Alvarado, and he started to push the fight more. But by that point, it was too late. He had lost so many rounds early, and then plus the knockdown, it just simply was not enough. He simply didn't do enough in the fight. But Marquez fought a smart fight. I mean, I'm not going to say he looked like the Marquez of old, because he clearly didn't. I mean, he showed glimpses of of his counter punching prowess, and glimpses of what he did at his absolute peak. But it was not like a vintage performance, because in the second half of the fight you could see that Marquez was slowing down a little bit. Once Alvarado started pushing the fight, he got hit a little bit more. Marquez, he got dropped in the 9th round, getting caught in an exchange, and not really hurt. But the fact of the matter is, he always tends to get hit and caught and dropped when he fights. He doesn't fight the way, with his lack of speed. Like he was always a slow guy, but he's now slower. So I mean, to get caught in an exchange like that wasn't really wise. He's just lucky that Alvarado isn't a massive, major puncher, because the shot he got caught with, he could have hurt him if it was a big guy with a bigger punch. But the first half he looked like dominant, and showed glimpses of, what he did at his best. But the second half he didn't look as good, simply because Alvarado pushed the fight and did what he should have been doing from the beginning of the fight.
It was a little bit, since we got you on kind of at the last minute, Shawn, it was a little bit rude to have you on the show and not give you the time to tell folks about yourself. So I'm gonna do that now. You are a follower and fan of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. One, tell us how you found out about us, and tell the folks about yourself in terms of what you're doing. Where can they find you if they want to talk boxing and whatnot?
I'm a big boxing fan, so I've been joining for the last few years, joining a lot of the other people on YouTube, looking for good conversation. Whether I agree with people or not, I just think it's nice to have this forum and be able to share opinions and talk boxing and promote it a little more. We're in a new era, a new age, where we're lucky where we get this opportunity. Me, I'm Canadian. I've been watching boxing since the 70s, late 70s. So it's great to have this opportunity to be able to talk about the sport I love.
Indeed, indeed. I'll ask you this question. You can follow up, Kent. The corner of Alvarado was imploring him to put on the pressure, to put more punches, in effect to make Marquez show his age by being in his face constantly. And yet, to me, it seemed that Alvarado didn't pull the trigger. Do you think it was a case of him being wary of the counterpunching brilliance that Marquez still has? Or do you think it is a somewhat residual effect of both the fights with Rios and especially Provodnikov. That question is to you, Shawn, and you can follow up, Ken.
Pardon me?
I was asking, when you look at Alvarado, he was being implored by his corner constantly throughout the fight to step up the pressure, to get in Marquez's face and make the old man show his age. Do you think that is the fact that he did not throughout, except when he got knocked down? Do you think that was the case of him being respectful of Marquez's counterpunching skill, which he still has, or do you think somehow that his failure to pull the trigger, particularly early on, do you think that was a kind of indirect effect, a byproduct of his consecutive tough fights with Rios and especially Provodnikov?
I think it's mostly because Marquez, I mean, obviously maybe he's a little gun shy after his last two fights against big punchers, and then early on I think Marquez caught him and made him think a little more than made him think about Marquez's power. Probably felt that it was a little stronger than he first anticipated, and then his boxing wasn't really working, so I think he had to come up with another plan, which was pushing and being aggressive, but I don't think he felt very comfortable using that. And like Ken said earlier, I mean, after he got knocked down, I think he sort of felt survival kick in where he had to do something, where he had to push it a little more. And Marquez made it a little more easy for him because he stood in the pocket and continued to exchange. He didn't sort of move out after he threw his punches. So then he was able to land a punch and sort of give himself a breath of fresh air and some light at the end of the tunnel.
Quickly, your thoughts, Ken?
I think that once Marquez landed some good sharp counters, he just never seemed to be willing to engage. I think Alvarado had in his mind, like, once he got hit, he's like, I think he went into the fight with the mentality of, like, this guy's a great counterpuncher. He slowed down a little bit. Let me see if I can match him counterpunching. And I think it was a stupid idea, personally. I think it was a stupid idea to try to counterpunch with him. I mean, because we know Alvarado's slower, and he simply does not have the skill to counterpunch with a guy like Marquez. So I think he fell into the trap of trying to counterpunch, and he got hit with some sharp counters, and he didn't seem willing to go for it. He just seemed to wanted to stay as a counterpuncher, and he just let Marquez build a lead. I think that was the biggest thing. And I also think he was wary of the sharp shots. They weren't necessarily the biggest punches in the world, but they were very, very sharp and very, very clean. And a guy like Marquez will make you wary, no matter if he's 40 years old or not. He will make you wary of his ability as a counterpuncher, and a lot of guys would not commit in fear of being countered. Because I'll tell you this, Marquez, for a guy, I've always described Marquez as the type of guy that he can punch, but his type of punches I think his punches are different. I think he kind of hits. It feels like a club. It's not like like he hits you. It's like being hit in the head with a club. And I think, and if you get hit in the head with an object, it doesn't feel good. And I think that's what a lot of fighters do. Once they get hit by him and realize, he can punch a little bit and he's a sharp counterpuncher, you're not willing to commit. Like at first they go in there and they say, oh, well, he's slow. If I can get to him first. But usually Marquez finds a way to get to you first. And I think that's what happened to Alvarado.
Moving forward, fellas. A lot of the talk afterwards in terms of what next for Marquez is, of course, the fifth fight with Manny Pacquiao. I have to be honest here and say I really don't want to see that fight. I thought that both guys suffered, even though Marquez won that last fight, 2012 November, I believe it was, that both guys looked damaged. I think they took a little bit too much punishment for my liking. And again, I just don't want to see that fight. Uh, I'll go to you on this one, Kent. You can follow up, Shawn. Your thoughts on this proposed fifth fight between Pacquiao and Marquez? Uh, yeah, your thoughts on this proposed fifth bout between Pacquiao and Marquez. Again, I'll say it again. I don't want to see it.
I'm going to be honest. I mean, for historic purposes, it's good for boxing. Let's just be realistic. It's good for boxing historic purposes, you know. Anytime two guys fight 5 times, I mean, historically it's going to be remembered, you know, because they were such competitive and good fights. And I think a fifth fight would be good and competitive. But I just don't think, you know, I'll use the stance that Robert Garcia used. He's like, he's not really interested, but we're gonna see it. That's the point. We're gonna see it. Doesn't matter what we think. Doesn't matter, you know, like what the public, you know, really wants. I mean, a lot of the public is just gonna go with the wave and say, let's see a fifth fight with Pacquiao. You know, it's good for historic purposes, but I'm not like dying to see it. Let's just put it that way.
Your thoughts, Shawn? Do you think I'm wrong here and being really hesitant towards seeing a fifth fight between these two?
I can understand what you're saying. I mean, a lot of people right now on YouTube feel the same way. But I go back and say that before the fourth fight, you guys said a lot of the same things, that you didn't want to see a fourth fight. And then it ended up being the most, you know, the biggest event of the year in boxing. It was huge, and it had huge repercussions because of it. So, you know, it's not that this is one of the top fights I would like to see, because we have seen it 4 times before. But I know in seeing it that I'm going to see a great fight, and you're not sure who's going to win, even though I did feel that Manny started to show his speed really take over in the last fight until he got caught becoming a little too aggressive, sort of like Marquez did against Alvarado. So I think it's going to be a great fight. I'm interested in seeing it because they're always good, all 4 of them prior. And historically, this is a big event. I mean, Marquez wants to win the welterweight title, and this is really the only opportunity he has, unless, I mean, he's going to fight Porter, and I don't see that happening, to become the first Mexican to win 4 weight divisions, which for him would be a huge accomplishment. So, I mean, I think motivated-wise, he's there. I mean, Pacquiao coming off of a knockout, the first one in over 10 years, of course he's going to be motivated. So they're both not the fighters they used to be. They're both a little on the decline. I mean, Floyd obviously doesn't want to fight Manny, so this will be a good fight in the meantime.
We'll talk about Manny a little bit later, as a matter of fact, in the news segment. I'm on the undercard of Mike Alvarado. Very impressive performance, I felt, for Viktor Postol. Scoring 11th round KO over Selcuk Aydin. This fight was a eliminator for the WBC 140-pound belt, currently held by Danny Garcia. I'll go to you on this, Kent. Again, I said it was a very impressive performance. Not only the fact that Postol thoroughly outboxed Aydin. I thought he was more impressive against Aydin than Soto Karass was and Guerrero was when they defeated Aydin. And not only the speed and just the skill as he boxed him through and through, but that 11th round shot, that right uppercut that ended matters in round 11, sensational finish. Just again a thorough performance by Postol. I was very impressed. I liked what I saw of him a whole lot.
Oh, I was impressed. I kind of knew about Postol for a while. I mean, you know, I've watched several of his fights from over in Ukraine, and I had seen his fight with Hank Lundy, and you know, which was a competitive fight, a close fight, you know, but it could have went either way. But I felt Postol won that fight, so he had some, you know, resume coming into the fight. Aydin, the 2 times he stepped up against Robert Guerrero and Jesus Soto Karass, against tall, long guys who could jab, he's fallen short. And once again, he fought a tall jabber that could had a good work rate.
Though I did feel that Manny started to show his speed, really take over in the last fight until he got caught.
Wait a second, Ken. We got another guest joining us, Mr. Boxing Addict, big fan of the show. Cut the volume down on your computer, Addict. You can
historically
background music there, so mute it and cut the volume down.
Welterweight title. It's really the only opportunity he has, unless he's going to fight.
Or better yet, get off the YouTube. You might be on the YouTube thing. Now, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can all hear you. Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, I was just saying that going into the fight, Aydin has lost twice to long, tall guys, work rate guys who have a jab, and this is exactly the same recipe that Postol brought to the table. Tall guy who can jab, throws a lot of punches, and it was clear from round one that Aydin was looking for the one shot. That's always the way Aydin has fought. Always look for the one shot. He's always been in love with his power, but he's never improved. He's always been that one guy that looks for one shot, and if he doesn't hurt you, he usually gets outboxed. And he had a moment in round one where he caught, Postol, but it wasn't a solid. It wasn't the type of punch to change around. I know a lot. I know the HBO people were selling it. Oh, that was a big shot. That won the round for Aydin, but they failed to recognize or just conveniently ignored that Postol landed about 27 or 28 punches in the round. That was the theme of the fight. Postol was just busier. He overwhelmed Aydin. Aydin had moments where he landed a good shot here and there, but he just was getting hit clean with just not big punches, but just getting hit repeatedly over and over and over. He couldn't get out of the way. He had no game. He had no second plan. He had no plan B. He was just getting beat up, and by the time the 11th round came, Aydin was kind of exhausted. He was slowing down, and that's where he got caught with the uppercut, and the fight was stopped. He was just getting beat up the whole fight. I didn't think the ref did the right thing after that shot. There was no reason for the fight to continue. He was just getting beaten down and worn down. It was a great performance for Postol. He went to the body. He used combinations body and head. Used the jab to keep Aydin away. It was really impressive performance.
Since we do have a new guest on the show, I'd like for you to formally introduce yourself, Boxing Addict. Tell us about yourself and tell us about how did you get in contact with the show, because I know you've been a follower and really a fan of the Pound for Pound Box Report, particularly the YouTube show, from the early days.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Hello, guys. Hope everyone's all right tonight. I'm a big fan of the show, always have been. I'm not sure how long you've been going now for. Is it a year or so? Maybe a bit longer?
Yeah.
Yeah, love the show. I'm a huge boxing fan, so I'm in Nottingham here in England. So obviously catch you guys normally the night after, actually. So I was actually just going to turn it in when I got your message, but I thought I'd join you for tonight.
All right.
For a little while, for as long as my eyes can stay open.
Okay. Quickly, your thoughts on the fight between Postol and Aydin. Your thoughts on that performance?
Sorry, which one was that?
The fight we're talking about now with Postol and Aydin.
To be honest, I didn't see it. I've not caught that one yet. I've got to catch up from last weekend's, to be honest.
Okay, I'll go to you, Shawn. Your thoughts on the bout, and like I said before, this bout was an eliminator for Garcia's belt. Do you think that Postol will land a shot at Garcia? Because I don't think so.
No, I don't see that happening. I mean, Garcia also wants to move up, and he could very well be Floyd's next opponent. Postol, he's good. He looked good. He's got all the tools. I think he could sort of move a little more behind his jab. He sort of stands there a little too much. and against a better caliber of fighter, I'm curious how he would look against guys like Aydin, who's limited, throws one punch, doesn't move very well. He looked pretty good. Doesn't have much power, so I think he's never really going to be one of the top echelon guys at 140. But obviously, he can be like a consistent top 10 guy who puts in some good fights. And styles make fights, so depending on who he fights, he could do pretty well. I would be curious to see him against a guy like the guy from Washington D.C.
Peterson?
Yeah. I would be curious to see him against a guy like Peterson, who throws a lot, also not a big puncher, but I mean a skilled fighter, a little faster, and not as easy to hit as a guy like Aydin. They would put on a good fight.
It's interesting you mentioned Lamar Peterson. We were talking about this before the show started, Ken. That would be a good fight to see, and I said that I think while you were saying, Shawn, that you don't think Postol is an echelon fighter at 140, Ken, I believe that in spite of Shawn's assessment, I believe that Postol could beat A. Peterson right now. Your thoughts on where Postol ranks right now amongst the top dogs at junior welterweight?
I think he ranks in the top 10 because simply he has good, solid wins against guys in the top 20. He has 2 already. He's got Aydin and he's got Lundy. So those are 2 solid wins. They're not, against world-class world beaters, but they're good wins, to have on your resume. And I think I do agree to an extent. He should move a little bit more when he fights guys that are a little bit more skilled, because I think sitting in front, especially with his height and his jab, he would be more effective with that type of, by doing that a little bit more. He would just be able to use his, he would just be a better overall boxer if he just did that a little bit more against more skilled guys, and
make
even
the fight easier for him. In other words,
yeah, it would make the fight so much easier for him. I think a lot of the stuff that he does is simply because he's in the Freddie Roach camp now, and he's got a lot of offensive guys. All the guys he works with there are offensive. So I think a lot of what Postol does is to counteract, some of the guys he's sparring against, because he's definitely sparring guys like Provodnikov. They mentioned that, guys like probably Cotto and Pacquiao. So he's like, the way I see his style developing is his offense is his defense, but I think he would best suit it if he moved a little bit more, because when I seen him fight, a guy like when I saw him fight Lundy, he did move a little bit more. He was more of he boxed a little bit more too, while punching and using his jab, and I think he should get back to that. But working at wild card, it's going to be very, very difficult. But it'd be interesting to see what kind of adjustments he made against a better fighter. I'd love to see him fight Peterson. I don't know what the deal with, because he was on the top-ranked card and he won so impressively, I wouldn't be surprised if Top Rank just grabbed him and signed him. And that would, depending on certain situations, it'd be interesting to see if a Peterson fight comes along or any fight with that Golden Boy camp. It'd be interesting. But right now, I think he would be best suited to fight. I like to see him fight a guy in probably the top 8 or top 5. That's where I want to see him. I want to see if he can really hang with a guy with guys that are more at the elite level. I really want to see how he handles himself.
I want to quickly talk about this next bout that happened in Argentina between Omar Narvaez and Antonio Garcia. Narvaez scoring a 4-round KO. And I'll go to you, Ken, to warning boxing fans. We're about to get into some boxing nerdery here. More or less the fight itself. I want to talk about the legacy of Omar Narvaez. Narvaez scoring, I believe this was his 10th defense of the junior bantamweight belt. Double-digit defenses at 115 and 112. when you look at his career overall, he's had a very good career, but in many ways, his bout has been defined by his only loss to Nonito Donaire a few years back, 2011, I believe it was. I'll
Yes.
go to you on this one, Kent. Your thoughts about the career of Narvaez. How good do you think he is, and do you think that it is wrong of folks to narrowly define him by the loss to Donaire?
See, the thing is, the American public define anyone who fight poorly on this soil and immediately dismiss them, and that's one of the most ignorant and most narrow-minded views. You know, a lot of like, I'm not saying all American boxing fans are like that, but a lot of them are. They're very narrow-minded. Once you have a bad performance on this soil, they throw you in the trash bin. So that's basically the way they've looked at Narvaez. Like, they threw him in the trash bin. They said, oh, he wasn't that good. You know, he fought a lot of guys that were, you know, in Argentina, you know, and they discount them, you know, without really knowing about the fighters, calling them bums and, you know, hand-picked opponents and, you know, that type of nonsense, you know. And I think it's very, very narrow-minded and ignorant. But I'll tell you this. Narvaez fought a lot of contenders, especially at flyweight. He fought some really solid contenders. He made 15 defenses of the WBO title. I mean, a guy who's you know, I don't think for people to discount that he did that before even coming to the United States. He made 15 defenses, and he traveled out of Argentina. He traveled like 6 or 7 times out of Argentina before he even came to the U.S. And that was going over to Europe and fighting those guys, and they were just some of the top contenders, like for titles. So I think he's a very, very good fighter that's probably being unfairly, you know, disregarded based on the Donaire fight, you know, by his own admission in the HBO, when HBO talked to him, he said it simply. He said it clear as a bell. He said, I want to see how I do against a bigger guy. You know, I don't feel like he says, I'm not here. He said something to me along the lines of, I'm not here to win. I want to see how I can do against a bigger guy. And, you know, I think a lot of the animosity stems from the fact he made Donaire kind of look bad. He exposed some of Donaire's flaws. You know, he's that crafty and that experienced. He's a little guy. He's 5'3". He's not the biggest puncher in the world. He's more of a snappy, sharp puncher. But he went into that fight simply not there to win, and I think that was the wrong attitude for Narvaez to have. But I can't knock him, because other than that, he's gone on and had a really good career. He's made 15 defenses at flyweight, 10 at junior bantamweight. That's 25 total defenses. That's a Hall of Famer right there. But simply because he's never fought, you know, he's never been on mainstream HBO or Showtime or anything else, and he's fought, you know, mostly in Argentina and Europe, he'll never get the credit he deserves.
Boxing Addict, are you familiar with Omar Narvaez, and if so, your assessment on him and his career?
Yeah, a little bit, mainly through the Donaire fight. Obviously, great little boxer. His record is unbelievable, I think, really. He's obviously not got the exposure in the States, and you know, that's maybe been to his detriment a little bit. But yeah, I agree. Hall of Famer, great little fighter. Yeah.
And I'll go to you on this one, Sean. Kent mentioned how he kind of exposed Donaire a bit. I agree to that in that regard, because what he showed was that Donaire, number one, see, in fights like that, Donaire, Narvaez, really elite fighters, they find a way to force a stoppage against a guy like Narvaez, who Kent mentioned. He was just there to really test himself, and yet Donaire didn't. He showed that Donaire is not really that good of a body puncher. He's not really that good of a finisher. And I think that speaks to some of the flaws in Donaire, and also to the toughness of Narvaez. Your thoughts on the career of Omar Narvaez as a fighter? Where would you rank him in your own little listings and your own little, in your own mind in terms of how good he is?
Well, he's a great small fighter, and unfortunately, small fighters don't get much recognition now or before. Um, he's in a very small weight. You can look at a guy like Chocolatto, who's very exciting. Lots of KOs, great competition so far. Moved up to fight better fighters.
And let me
And
interrupt for those who don't know who you're talking about is Ramon Chocolito Gonzalez, who's on my pound for pound top 10 list. Strawweight, junior flyweight champion. Now he's moving up to fight for a flyweight belt, presumably later on this year.
yeah, now he's on everybody's top 10 list. But I mean, it took him fighting the guy Estella, who just beat the American Hawaiian Punch guy, to sort of get there and to build some name recognition. To build some name recognition. And he's an exciting fighter, and nobody knows him. A guy like Narvaez, slick boxer, real small, hard to look good against. Like guys like Vasquez. They're all great fighters. They know their craft. They know how to win. I mean, I think him coming up to fight Donaire, gutsy move, real small guy. He exposed that, a good boxer can make a good fighter look limited. And I mean, I think Donaire was surprised with how good he was. And I think he sort of figured he would just dominate him with his size and power. But he wasn't able to. Which, I mean, in hindsight sort of shows you why Rigo had such success. Because, I mean, he's also a slick fighter, but with a lot more pop. And he was able to sort of punish Donaire more than a guy like Narvaez could. But Narvaez is excellent. And I think, obviously, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. But he's never going to get, like, big recognition abroad. I mean, he's pretty old now. He doesn't have many years left. I mean, he probably doesn't have many fights left in his career. But yeah, he's been one of the great small fighters out there.
Any follow-up comments, fellas?
I agree. I think he's not going to get any recognition. I think the problem is if you don't get exposure in America, even if you do get exposure in America, like Gonzalez, he only got one fight in America, and it was on Wealth TV. It wasn't like he got HBO exposure or Showtime exposure. That was the thing. He didn't get that type of exposure, and people still don't know who Gonzalez is. Unless you really, really pay attention, go on YouTube and search out these fights.
Unless you're folks like us.
That's the point. If you don't watch those fights, not many people know who they are, and it's sad. And a lot of small fighters will never get recognition that they deserve. It's sad. And I think, and for people to like just disregard Narvaez's boxing ability, man, people don't realize, man, a guy like Narvaez, who was an Olympian twice. He was a '96 Olympian in '96 and 2000. Fought in 2 Olympics. Had a very good amateur career. He just, the way he's getting disregarded is crazy. But he's he's an all-time great. Well, not really an all-time great, but an all-time great little guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the news. Boxing news of the week. Big news broke, I believe it was a couple of days ago. Manny Pacquiao signing a 2-year extension with Top Rank. And I'll go to you on this one, Shawn. While it makes sense for him to sign with Top Rank, I do not know if it's the wisest move for him. I've always said in the past that if he wanted to make the fight with Mayweather, if he wanted to make the most out of his career in terms of money, that he should leave Top Rank and go solo. Be his own promoter, his own boss. That way he can make the most money that he can make all the money, not split it with Top Rank and not split it with this person or that person. Am I wrong in questioning, I should say, being skeptical, being cynical of Pacquiao re-signing with Top Rank?
Well, what a lot of Western people fail to realize is that Manny, being an Asian fighter, and Bob Arum with HBO trying to break into the Chinese market, I mean, he's sort of the flagship for that opening. And people don't realize the Philippines current status with China right now. People think Manny is limited in money, but I mean, he gets paid out a lot from Chinese organizations, Chinese companies. He's promoted a lot abroad by Chinese companies who sort of are taking over the Philippines right now and taking over Asia. So him being with Bob Arum and HBO, I mean, it's just going to continue to push that. They're talking now of the next fight being in Macau once again. So, I mean, people don't see that the big market that they're trying to open. I mean, Floyd Mayweather, yeah, fine, it's a fight there. I mean, people can say he doesn't want the fight because he signed with Arum, but, oh, Floyd wanted the fight so bad 3 other times, he was willing to do it with Arum, so then there's no difference now. If Floyd wants to fight, he will make the fight.
But now, excuse me for interrupting, but now that he's established himself, do you really think he needs Arum to do that? Don't you think he could just hire some smart folks on his own and tap into that market further?
But Arum is the center as promotional media or promotional stuff goes right now in Asia. He already has the Macau thing set up, and you know it's a huge venue, and he has it wrapped up. He's really basically the only big promoter that uses it, and he's the one that's getting the contacts and has the Chinese fighters on top rank, and he's the one that's sort of opening that door. And Manny being an Asian and being Filipino, and taxes being the way they are in the States, I mean, he gets taxed a lot less to fight there. So financially for him, it's a good deal. If he tries to get the Floyd fight, fine, it's the biggest fight there. But that's if he gets the fight. There's no guarantee that if he didn't sign with Bob Arum that Floyd was going to give him the fight anyway, regardless of all his mumbo-jumbo that he continues to say. I mean, Floyd is Floyd.
Yeah, your thoughts on this, kid, and then you can follow up Boxing Addict.
I think, Shawn makes a good point. I mean, you got to understand that Bob Arum pretty much owns that region now. Like he's going to lock it down. I think he's going to. I think he's actually going to expand outside of Macau eventually. But I think for right now, Macau is a real moneymaker, and I'm telling you, the Cotai Arena. He's got a contract with them. He's got business people lined up ready to work with him. Listen, as soon as he got into that market, people wanted to work with him because he's got money and he can bring things to the table. And that's a great. You can say whatever you want about Bob Arum. At the end of the day, he delivers. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. In the 50 years he's been in the sport, and I think being aligned with Arum, especially Pacquiao, I mean. It's a good business situation because of his next fight being in Macau, and the money there. There's a lot of money there, and Shawn makes a very good point. We don't really touch upon this. Manny got a lot of backing from Chinese. He's got a lot of backing from them, a lot of backing, and I'm telling you, a lot of those investors are probably now going to back a lot of the Chinese fighters that Bob is working with now, like guys like Ik Yang and guys like that who are young guys, Shiming and that guy Rexo and those guys. Those are young guys. They're really gonna want to build, and I think the political arena is always especially if Manny's in with the Chinese, him being a politician and the Chinese, that's a very good situation. I mean, I'm telling you, it's a real big thing there, and it could be a big deal. And I've always said that the Macau thing was going to be a big deal from the jump. I already said the next great fighter is either going to come out of Asia or somewhere around that area. I think that the next great fighter is going to be from that part of the world.
Oh, you already know who I think that is. That guy is already on the come up. Certain fighter by the name of in Japan by the name of Inoue, who we talked about before. So
yeah, I think the next great fighter is going to come from there. It may not be Inoue per se. I mean, he's still got to be a lot written on him, but he's shown a lot. But there's going to be a lot of good talent coming out of that part of the world. We haven't seen the best out of that area yet.
Your thoughts, Boxing Addict?
Yeah, I think the guys have pretty much covered it. It's such a lucrative market out there, isn't it? So, for Pacquiao, it's probably a good deal for him. I think, the Floyd fight's been dead and buried for years. I don't think it will ever happen. And, Aram's going to use him as a flagship out there. I mean, Pacquiao's a hero out in Asia, isn't he? And if you think, he can build something out there that'll be pretty amazing. If they really get into their boxing, the Chinese, the Japanese, they're going to bring some good fighters out. So yeah, I think it's probably a good deal for Pacquiao, really. He's achieved most things in the sport already, hasn't he? Apart from fighting Floyd.
Yeah, listen, Pacquiao's done a lot for boxing. Even that's simply because even though he hasn't fought Floyd, he's done a lot for boxing. He's generated a lot of money for boxing, more than people realize. And I'm going to say right now, Manny's a good businessman. Whatever you say about Bob Arum, he's a good businessman at the end of the day. And I think, I'll tell you, and the thing with, mentioning Japan, Bob already has a Japanese fighter in Ryota Murata. So you could see it's starting to really, really, really heat up. It's really starting to heat up there, and it's I think I just think he's going to own that market. Bob Arum's going to own that. When this is all said and done, he's going to own it.
Yeah, your guys bring up some very interesting points. Macau in particular, that could be the Vegas and Atlantic City combined over in Asia, because that has huge potential in terms of big money fights in that area in general, that Asian area in general. You're right, kid. There's a lot of fighters coming. You mentioned Murata, Inoue, Shaming. I have my questions about him, but still, they're talking about him having a title shot next year. So again, a lot of fighters coming from that market. There's also a guy who was just recently defeated, Ioka. He could come back and have a real highly successful career as well. And there are other fighters along the pipe in China, in Asia, and I will throw Thailand in as well. The guy we talked about last week, Rung Roy, who beat Ioka. So again, huge potential and a lot of money that can be made. And while I think Pacquiao, he could make more money on his own, it's certainly understandable why he decided to sign with Bob Arum because of the points you guys mentioned. Next news on the docket, Terrence Crawford, WBO lightweight champion, defeated Ricky Burns with the belt in March. Many people are suggesting that he's already the best lightweight in the world. Well, it was announced, I think, last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, that he will be making his first defense to the title. Very intriguing bout, fellas, against Yuriorkis Gamboa, June 28 in his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska, on HBO. I'll go to you on this one, Boxing Addict. We mentioned Crawford, how highly we think of him, and Gamboa, how even though he's up and down, there's still a lot of potential there with him. Your thoughts on Crawford fighting Gamboa and taking such a task, taking on such a fight in his hometown for his first defense? Your thoughts?
Yeah, great fight. I'm really looking forward to that one, actually. I'm quite surprised Terrence Crawford's taken that as his first defense. So fair play to him. Saw the Ricky Burns fight. He obviously demolished Ricky Burns. Obviously being a Brit self, Ricky was a good fighter, but he wasn't on the level of a Terrence Crawford. I think Terrence will go on to be a really good champion, actually, and I think he'll just about get through that fight. Maybe a points victory against Gamboa. But yeah, fair play to him taking that fight on in his first defense,
Your thoughts, Shawn?
No, I agree. It's a great fight, and yeah, big props for him for taking on a tough guy like Gamboa. Gamboa, it will help him. A big name guy, his first defense, not a legitimate lightweight, but nonetheless, a fast, powerful guy who was going to be one of the top guys in boxing until he signed with 50. And it's a tough fight to call. Gamboa is great. And he hasn't looked great the last 2 years, but we don't know what he will do. He has the potential to be a superstar, and this is a good one for him. If he could pull it off, it would set him up for big fights ahead. But I think Crawford will win. I think Crawford has a style, the long reach, slick boxer, be able to go left and right. I think he'll be able to stay on the outside and just frustrate Gamboa and get the win.
Speak to the confidence level of a Terrence Crawford, Kent, because there are some fighters out there we both know that wouldn't take on this kind of a fight for their first defense in their hometown, even, of all things.
Yeah, I give him a lot of credit. He's a guy that's not willing to take a risk like that. There's not many guys that's willing to jump in the ring in their first defense and fight a guy like Gamboa. I couldn't think of one right now. I mean, so I give him a lot of credit, a lot of props. I personally think it's going to be a 50-50 fight. It could go either way. I mean, if you look at it, it could go either way because both guys have skill. You know, they're both very good boxers. They both can punch. And it's going to be a very interesting fight. I'd lean personally more towards Crawford, but I wouldn't be surprised if Gamboa won. It's just such a good fight. It's a good fight. I mean, it's a good 50-50 fight, and I give Crawford all the credit in the world for making this fight. Because, you know, he could have took an easy defense in his hometown, knocked the guy out, and everybody's happy. But he's really testing himself in front of his, you know, the hometown, you know, fans. So I give him credit for this.
I lean towards Crawford, too, because of the southpaw style and the reach. The only issue is when has Crawford fought anybody who has the similar speed that he has? When has Crawford fought anybody that has real power? Crawford, he's been hit at times, but he hasn't been hit with a guy with the dynamic power of Gamboa. Yes, I say power because I think Gamboa, you know, he's went 12 rounds his last few fights, but I still think he can punch. I think he punches the harder than a lot of people give him credit for. And I think for this fight, because he knows what's on the line, because he hadn't looked good in the last couple of years, I think he's really going to step up in this fight. And again, I think Crawford win, but I'm with Ken here. Don't be surprised if Gamboa pulls this out. And this is going to be a very, very intriguing and interesting bout. I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it to happen. I'm really looking forward to it. And
yeah, I was just going to mention if Crawford did fight a guy with power,
Prescott, yeah,
Prescott,
but Prescott really didn't hit him.
No, he's slow.
Right.
He's slow. He is a puncher, but he's a slow puncher. You know, and that was the difference. Crawford was just able to see everything he was doing, and he was able to negotiate around that. You know.
And the thing is, Gamboa, he has the speed, he has the foot movement, and he fights with a little bit of an awkward style where he could get to Crawford with some shots. That's my thing.
Yeah, that's what makes the fight so intriguing because it's Gamboa. I know getting Gamboa in this fight, he's going to bring his A++ game. I already know because that's the type of fighter he is. He kind of has that little bit of Felix Trinidad in him where he, you know, where he kind of fights lazy against guys he should handle quite easily. You know, he gets caught and dropped, but then he gets up and he fights harder. And I think we're gonna see, you know, a different Gamboa, I think, in this fight than we've seen, you know, because I think the thing with Gamboa is I think he kind of gets lazy against guys that aren't up to his competition level. And Crawford's definitely up to his competition level. That's going to make him focus, you know, and be on this game even so much more. So that's why it's such an intriguing fight and a very good fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on and start to close down the show by talking about the fight that's happening this upcoming weekend. Headlined, of course, by Adonis Stevenson making his mandatory defense against Andrzej Fonfara. Fight happening on Showtime in Montreal for Stevenson's WBC belt. A lot of controversy heading into the bout, not basically on Fonfara Stevenson, but on the failed negotiations for a Stevenson bout against Kovalev and back and forth between Kovalev and Stevenson and the Duvas and Stevenson's management. Stevenson moving on to sign a deal with Al Heyman and whatnot, basically nullifying that bout for the time being. I'll go to you on this one, Shawn. On paper, Stevenson should win and win handily. Hey, Mr. Fighters. um, do you think there's any potential, because of all the uproar and the drama and the back and forth controversy and whatnot, do you think there's a situation where Stevenson can be distracted moving into this fight, going on into this fight, and somehow Fonfara, who I'll be honest with you, I don't think that highly of. Do you think there's a potential that Stevenson, because of the distractions, would not be fully engaged in this fight, and Fonfara can pull off the potential upset?
Well, I mean, Steven's shown that he can be caught, right, by low-level competition. I mean, he got knocked out once already.
You talking about Darnell Boone?
By a guy who was not a great fighter. And so, obviously, it can happen. But at this stage, I think he's looked like he's improved every fight. He's looked like, as a boxer, he's more confident, able to use speed and distance, and obviously he still has huge power. So, I mean, the way he's been fighting from the outside, using his movement to sort of make it hard for guys to land on him and just waiting for his shots, I think if he just fights that style, I mean, within 6 rounds he should be able to get rid of Fonfara, who's basically nothing but a tune-up fight anyways.
Fonfara, kid, his biggest win was against Glenn Johnson, old, ancient Glenn Johnson. Right, old 42-year-old Glenn Johnson. Again, I said I don't see him winning if Stevenson is right, if he's there. Do you see any scenario where a Fonfara could give him problems? Because I just don't. If Stevens is there 100%.
I think he can, and I'll explain why. And a lot of people.
Oh boy.
And I think a lot of people scratch their head when they hear this. But I think the thing with Fonfara is he uses his jab a lot, and I think that's the one thing that could trouble Stevenson. That's the one thing that we haven't seen recently. You know, a fighter consistently use a jab against Stevenson, and I think that would be a little bit of a problem. But other than that, I think Stevenson wins. I just think that Fonfara will put on a better than expected performance. I think he's a good fighter. I don't think he's a great fighter. I think he is getting better, but at the same time, he's kind of, his best wins have come against guys that are, old, like Glenn Johnson, or aging guys like Gabriel Campillo, and although they are solid wins, they're not great wins. If you beat a prime Glenn Johnson, then I can understand. Then it would be like, oh shit, he beat a prime Glenn Johnson, or he managed to stop a prime Gabriel Campillo at his peak of his powers, coming off some of the performances he had against Cloud and Shumanov. Then I could understand, but they kind of were slipping at that point. But at the same time, I think Fonfara gives it a good go. I think jab will trouble Stevenson at points, but I think Stevenson should, win the fight.
You see any potential upset here, BoxingAddict?
No, not really. I think Stevenson probably takes him out within 4 or 5 rounds here. Fonfara's a game guy though. I think he'll give it a good shot, like Kent says. He's got a decent jab and he can fight a little bit, but essentially he's going to get knocked out, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so too. I think eventually, you talk about Fonfara's jab. I think they could be neutralized by Stevenson's jab, who's shown a really good jab over his last, particularly his last fight. And I think he's improving in that department. I think he's improving as a boxer. I'm talking about the Bellew fight, which he really uses jab and his boxing skills to good effect and show improving skills. I think he can counter that the Fonfara jab and activity with the jab of his own. And again, I'm a little bit wary of Fonfara's chin. I don't like guys. Again, this is a kind of stereotype here, and I apologize for it. I don't like guys with kind of long necks and skinny jaws, if you will. And Fonfara has that. To me, that tells that you may be a little chinny, that once you get hit real solid, that you may get hurt. And I see that in Fonfara. And again, I just think he will be outboxed by Adonis Stevenson Provided that Stevenson is there, I think he should have his way with him.
Yeah, your point about Fonfara, I saw him once a number of years back on ESPN get stopped by a dangerous journeyman who's actually a pretty good fighter when he gets the time to prepare, is Derek Finley. And Derek Finley was fighting him at 160 pounds, and we all know that Derek Finley's not a 160-pound fighter. Okay, he's a small guy, but he was able to catch, from far and knock him out. And I'll be honest, Derek can punch. Sort of like with the whole Stevenson thing, he fought a guy Darnell Boone, and Darnell Boone is a puncher. He can punch, and he's upset the apple cart before. So their losses have come against those dangerous guys. But yeah, I could see where a question of Fonfara's chin, because the time I did see him knocked out, he was really hurt. I mean, he took a shot that, and he's a little bit taller guy. And the thing also with that fight too, he didn't use his height. He was just fair game for Finley, and that if he doesn't use his height, if he falls in against Stevenson, that could lead to a knockout.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to close the show down on that note. For those who want to get in contact with you, and I'll start with you, Kent, where can the folks find you if they want to get in contact with you and talk boxing?
Yeah, just hit me up at facebook.com/kent.airs.1. That's my Facebook page. You can reach me there.
And for you, Boxing Addict, if folks want to reach out to you and talk boxing, where can they get you at?
Yeah, on my YouTube channel more than anything. I don't really tweet or anything like that.
Give the link for your YouTube channel. What specific name of your YouTube channel? Do you go by a Boxing Addict?
Yeah, Mr. Boxing Addict. Yeah, you can find me on that.
And same thing for you, Shawn. Where can the folks reach if they want to talk boxing and get in contact with you?
Yeah, I think they can reach me easily on YouTube, Shawn Newton, and they will see me all over YouTube as well, so they can contact me that way as well.
And again, y'all know what it is. If you want to get in contact with the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, you can get. We got pages on Facebook, on Google+, on Tumblr. We also on Pinterest. I should have mentioned that earlier. We got a Pinterest board. Twitter at P4P Boxing Report. Again, if you want to reach in contact with me and get boxing, reach me at Brother JR. On Twitter, you can talk boxing and other matters with me. I want to thank you, Ken, for being on with me again this week. I want to thank our special guest, Mr. Boxing Addict, Shawn Newton, for joining us. Thank you for joining us, guys, on the next episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We will do a recap of Fonfara Stevenson. And we're doing big coverage, pre-fight coverage of the rematch between Carl Froch and George Groves. We're trying to line up some special guests to be on that show as well, so look out for that. Big coverage. We're going to do heavy talk about that fight. Really looking big. Supposed 80,000 is going to be there. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it. Again,
I'm going myself, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Oh, you're going to be there?
Well, yeah, I'm from Nottingham. I'm a Froch man, aren't I? So I'll be there. Yeah.
Oh, we might have to have you on again next week, Boxing Act, just to talk about that fight, and even after that fight, just to talk about the atmosphere there.
Yeah. Well, I'll be going down to the weigh-in on Friday morning, so yeah, if I'm still up late Thursday night, you doing it at the same time next week, yeah?
Absolutely.
About 2:30, something like that.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
I'll try.
Absolutely. So again, this has been another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I want to thank Kent, Mr. Boxing Addict, Shawn Nelson for joining us. We'll see you next time. You guys have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
See you guys.
Good night.